She always had a way of making people feel special, my sister Julie said as she arranged a bouquet of peonies, grandmother's favorite, on the dining room table. Everyone around nodded, their eyes glistening with fresh grief. I stood in the kitchen doorway, half listening, while scrubbing at a stubborn stain on the serving platter that would soon hold the food people had been dropping off all morning. 3 days after the funeral, and I was still cleaning, still organizing, still making sure everyone else had what they needed. My hands were raw from disinfectant and hot water, the same hands that had held my grandmother's as she took her final breaths while Julie was stuck in traffic, arriving 15 minutes too late. The same hands that had administered medication 4 times daily for the past 3 years. The same hands that had cleaned, cooked, driven to countless doctor appointments, filled prescriptions, and managed the increasingly complex medical calendar that had become the backbone of our lives. Emma always knew just what to do, my mother said absently, not to me, but about me, as though I weren't standing right there. She's our rock. Rocks don't feel. Rocks don't bleed. Rocks don't expect recognition. Until they crack. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and lemon polish. A place where important decisions were archived in heavy paper and official stamps. Julie sat beside me, her designer purse perched on her lap, occasionally checking her phone. I'd taken the day off work, another day, another sacrifice in a long line of them, to be here. Before we begin, Mr. Harrington said, adjusting his glasses, I want to express my condolences. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. Thank you, Julie and I said in unison. Let's proceed with the reading of the will. I listened with half an ear at first. The formalities, the legal jargon, and then the substance began to register. To my beloved granddaughter, Julie, I leave my house and all its contents, my investments and savings accounts, and my jewelry collection. The words continued, but they blurred together as a rushing sound filled my ears. I felt lightheaded, confused. There must be some mistake. And to Emma? Mr. Harrington paused, turning the page. I leave my collection of cookbooks and my gardening tools with my sincere thanks for her assistance in my later years. Assistance. That's what it had been reduced to. Assistance. Julie reached over and squeezed my hand, her face a perfect mask of composed sympathy. She loved those cookbooks, Julie whispered. She always said you were the only one who could make her recipes just right. I nodded mechanically. The cookbooks that I had already been using for years to prepare grandmother's meals. The gardening tools I'd been using to maintain her beloved rose bushes while she supervised from her wheelchair on the patio. Is there anything else? I asked the lawyer, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. That concludes the distribution of assets, Mr. Harrington confirmed, glancing at me with what might have been pity. I helped Julie move into grandmother's house the following month. Carried boxes, organized closets, suggested where furniture might look best. I smiled when she showed me how she planned to convert the sunroom into a home office. I nodded when she talked about modernizing the kitchen where I had prepared thousands of meals. You should take these now, Julie said, handing me a stack of well-worn cookbooks. And the gardening stuff is in the shed whenever you want it. Keep them, I said quietly. I won't need them. But they're yours. Grandmother wanted you to have them. I know what grandmother wanted. The words came out sharper than I intended. Julie's expression shifted, a flicker of defensiveness crossing her features. Emma, you know I offered to help more. I just couldn't. My career was at such a critical point, and the commute was impossible. You were already there. It made sense for you to... It's fine, Julie. I picked up my purse. I need to go. I've got an early morning tomorrow. Will you come by on Sunday? I'm hosting a little housewarming. A housewarming. For a house she'd inherited. A house where I had spent nearly every day for the past 3 years. I don't think so. I'm planning to take some time for myself. Emma? Julie called as I reached the door. She did love you. You know that, right? I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I know she did. What I didn't say, love without recognition is just another form of invisibility. 3 years passed. I moved to a small apartment across town, took a job at a different hospital, and slowly built a life that didn't revolve around someone else's needs. I learned what it felt like to wake up without immediately checking on another person. I discovered preferences I didn't know I had. for spicy food, for late-night movies, for spontaneous weekend trips. I spoke to my family less frequently. Christmas, Thanksgiving, the occasional birthday. I was polite but distant. I learned the power of, "I'm sorry, I can't make it." I discovered the liberation of choosing how to spend my time. Julie called occasionally, usually when she needed advice about something in the house. Where was the water shutoff valve? Did I remember the name of grandmother's handyman? Was there a history of plumbing problems in the guest bathroom? I answered her questions briefly, then ended the calls. My mother always asked, "When are you going to get over this, Emma?" As though my withdrawal was a temporary fit of pique rather than a fundamental reevaluation of my place in our family. I never answered directly. Some questions aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to make you feel guilty for asking them in the first place. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was halfway through preparing a new recipe. Cooking for pleasure now, not duty, when Julie's name flashed on my phone screen. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Emma?" Julie's voice was strained, higher pitched than normal. "It's Mom. She fell. They think it might be a stroke." The wooden spoon in my hand clattered to the counter. "Where is she?" "Memorial Hospital. I'm on my way, but I'm stuck in traffic." I'll go now." I was already turning off the stove. Some patterns are hard to break, even when you've recognized them. The hospital corridors were familiar territory, not just from my work as a nurse, but from the countless times I'd navigated them with grandmother. I found my mother's room easily, flashing my hospital ID to bypass visiting hour restrictions. She looked small against the white sheets, her face slack on one side. A monitor beeped steadily beside her. I checked her chart automatically, years of medical training kicking in. "Emma?" Her voice was slurred but recognizable. Her right hand reached for mine. "I'm here, Mom." I took her hand, noting the pulse, the temperature of her skin. "Julie's on her way." "You came." Tears welled in her eyes. "After everything." I adjusted her blanket, checked her IV line. "Of course I came." "I didn't understand before," she said, each word an effort. "What you did for her, for grandmother." I busied myself with straightening her pillows, uncomfortable with her sudden awareness. "It doesn't matter now." "It does." Her grip tightened on my hand. I saw the will before. I could have said something. The admission hung between us. My throat tightened. "Why didn't you?" "I didn't want to upset her. And Julie had been struggling financially, and you were always so capable." She swallowed with difficulty. "I thought you didn't need it." Capable. Another word for invisible. Another justification for taking someone for granted. "The doctor says it's not severe," I said, changing the subject. "With proper rehabilitation, you should recover most of your function." "Will you help me?" The question was small, vulnerable. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. I saw the fear in her eyes, the regret, the recognition that came too late. I saw myself 3 years ago, exhausted and unacknowledged. "I'll help coordinate your care," I said carefully. "I'll make sure you have what you need. But I won't be your caretaker, Mom. Not like before." Relief and disappointment warred on her face. "I understand." But she didn't. Not yet. Understanding would come later, with time and distance and the hard work of rebuilding what had been broken. Julie arrived an hour later, flustered and carrying an ostentatious flower arrangement. "How is she? What did the doctor say? Have they done an MRI? Should we get a second opinion?" The questions tumbled out of her as she paced the small room. "She's stable. Yes, they did an MRI. No, we don't need a second opinion yet." I gathered my purse and jacket. "She'll need rehabilitation. Several months, probably." Julie's pacing stopped. "Months? But I can't. My job, the house." "I know," I said, not unkindly. "I've already spoken with the social worker. There are good rehabilitation facilities. Insurance will cover part of it. We'll need to contribute for the rest." "We?" Julie's voice was small. "Family takes care of family," I said, echoing the phrase that had been used to justify so much of my own sacrifice. "I've made a list of what needs to be done. We can divide the responsibilities." I handed her the neatly written list: appointments to schedule, insurance to navigate, home modifications to consider. "This is a lot." Julie sank into the chair beside our mother's bed. "Yes, it is." I zipped my jacket. "I'll be back tomorrow morning to speak with the doctor. You should go home and rest. It's going to be a long few months." "Emma?" Julie called as I reached the door, an echo of that day 3 years ago when I'd walked out of Grandmother's house. I'm sorry. About Grandmother's will. About not understanding what you did. About everything. I paused, considering her words. The apology was years late, prompted by fear and sudden need rather than true recognition. But it was a beginning. I know you are, I said finally. I'll see you tomorrow, Julie. Over the following months, our roles shifted and realigned. Julie learned to navigate medical appointments, to ask the right questions, to provide the daily support our mother needed. I provided guidance from a careful distance, setting clear boundaries around my time and energy. I don't know how you did it, Julie confessed one evening as we sat in my apartment, reviewing our mother's progress. All those years with Grandmother, it's exhausting. Yes, I said simply. It is. Why did you do it? I considered the question, turning it over in my mind. Because I loved her. Because someone needed to. Because I thought it was my place. And now I know that care without boundaries isn't love, it's erasure. For both people. Julie nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand that. 6 months after her stroke, our mother moved back home, not to her old house, which had stairs she couldn't navigate, but to a small, accessible apartment near mine. Julie had sold Grandmother's house, our house as I'd once thought of it, finding it too large and too full of memories. I never felt right there, she admitted as we helped our mother arrange her new living room. It was always more your home than mine. The acknowledgement, so long in coming, settled something in me. It doesn't matter now, I said, and found that I meant it. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, my mother took my hand. Thank you, she said, her speech still slightly slurred from the stroke. Not just for this, but for teaching us. Teaching you what? How to see each other. How to be a family without losing ourselves. I squeezed her hand gently. I'm still learning that myself. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Julie. Sunday dinner at my place next week? I'm trying one of Grandmother's recipes from the cookbook. It won't be as good as yours. I smiled, feeling something unfurl in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but possibility. A new kind of recognition, built on equal footing. I'll bring dessert, I typed back, and maybe I'll show you a few tricks. As the seasons changed, our new pattern solidified. Sunday dinners became a regular occurrence, first at Julie's apartment, then rotating between our homes. Mom joined when she felt strong enough, her recovery slow but steady. We weren't the family we had been before. Something fundamental had shifted. The invisible architecture of our relationships had been dismantled and rebuilt, brick by careful brick. One Sunday in early spring, I arrived early to help Julie prepare dinner. She was attempting Grandmother's famous pot roast, a recipe I knew by heart after years of preparing it under the old woman's critical supervision. You're cutting the carrots too thick, I said, leaning against the kitchen counter. Julie looked up, knife paused mid-slice. Are you going to stand there critiquing, or are you going to help? I laughed and rolled up my sleeves. Move over. As we worked side by side, I realized how rarely we had done this before, simply existed together in the same space, engaged in a common purpose. There had always been a strange competition between us, one I hadn't fully understood until Grandmother's will had laid it bare. Can I ask you something? Julie said as she chopped onions. Something I've been wondering for a long time. Sure. Did you know you were Grandmother's favorite? The real favorite, I mean. The question caught me off guard. I set down the knife I was using. What are you talking about? Come on, Emma. She relied on you completely. She trusted you with everything. The house keys, her medical decisions, her daily care. Julie wiped her eyes. From the onions or emotion, I couldn't tell. You were the one she couldn't live without. But she left everything to you. Because she knew I needed it more. Because she thought... Julie hesitated. Because she thought you were the strong one. The one who would be fine no matter what. She said that? Julie nodded. The day before she died, when you were picking up her prescriptions, she told me to watch out for you after she was gone, said you'd given up too much already. The revelation settled over me like a fine dust, changing the shape and color of memories I thought I understood. She wasn't good at showing it, Julie continued. Maybe she didn't know how, but she saw you, Emma, even when the rest of us didn't. I turned back to the cutting board, blinking rapidly. The roast needs to cook for 3 hours. We should get it in the oven. Julie let me change the subject, understanding what I couldn't yet articulate, that some healing happens in silence, in the private chambers of the heart. The following week, I found myself driving to the cemetery for the first time since the funeral. I'd avoided it, telling myself it was just a patch of earth, that grandmother wasn't really there. But something in Julie's revelation had unlocked a door I'd kept firmly shut. The spring afternoon was warm, cherry blossoms scattering in the breeze as I made my way through the rows of headstones. Grandmother's was simple granite, her name and dates etched in clean lines. I stood before it, uncertain what I'd come for. "I was so angry with you," I said finally, feeling foolish speaking to stone. "I gave you everything, and you." The words faltered. Because what had she done, really? Made a choice about her possessions. Tried, in her limited way, to balance the scales between her granddaughters. "I thought you didn't see me," I continued. "All those years, all those hours. I thought I was invisible to you." A breeze stirred the flowers someone had left. Peonies, of course. Julie must have been here recently. "But maybe you did see me. Maybe you just didn't know how to say it." I knelt and brushed some fallen blossoms from the base of the headstone. "I'm learning to set boundaries now, to take care of myself first sometimes." "You would have hated that." I smiled slightly. "You would have called it selfish, but I think maybe that's what you wanted from me all along, to stop disappearing into other people's needs." The cemetery was quiet except for distant bird song and the rustle of leaves. No voice from beyond answered my questions. No sudden epiphany swept over me. Just the slow unfolding of understanding that had been taking place within me for 3 years. I placed my hand on the sun-warmed stone. "I forgive you," I said softly. "And I'm learning to forgive myself too." When Mom had her second stroke 8 months later, it was different. Not just the medical circumstances, this one more severe, more frightening, but our response to it. The frantic call from her neighbor, the ambulance ride, the tense hours in the waiting room. This time, Julie and I moved in tandem. She contacted the neurologist while I spoke with the nurses. I brought Mom's medication list while Julie arranged for her apartment to be checked on. We took shifts at the hospital, neither expecting the other to carry the bulk of the burden. "You look exhausted," I told Julie on the third night, arriving to relieve her from bedside duty. "Go home. Get some real sleep." "Are you sure? You worked all day." "I'm sure." I set down my bag, unpacking the fresh clothes I'd brought for Mom. "We're not doing anyone any good if we both collapse." Julie hesitated, then nodded. "Call me if anything changes. Anything at all." "I will. Now go." After she left, I settled into the chair beside Mom's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but recovery would be harder this time. Longer, with no guarantees. Mom stirred, her eyes opening to thin slits. "Emma? I'm here." I took her hand, the one that could still grip mine. "Julie just went home to rest." She made a small sound of acknowledgement. "You too?" "We're okay," I assured her. "We're figuring it out." "Good." Her eyes drifted closed again. "Proud of you, both." I sat in the dim hospital room, holding my mother's hand as she slipped back into sleep, thinking about the strange alchemy that had transformed our family. How loss and betrayal had somehow forged something stronger, more honest in the end. Not perfect. We still struggled with old patterns, still sometimes fell into the comfortable grooves of our former roles, but different, better. The realization came to me there in the quiet. Healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means building something new on top of it, like a garden planted over a battlefield. The soil remembers what happened there, but new life grows anyway. The decision to move Mom into assisted living was unanimous. Her needs were beyond what either Julie or I could safely manage at home, and the constant worry was taking a toll on us both. "It feels like failure," Julie confessed as we toured the facility. "Bright, well-staffed, far better than we could have afforded individually." "It's not," I assured her. "It's acknowledging reality." "Would you have done this for grandmother, if you'd had the choice?" The question gave me pause. I don't know. Maybe not then, but I know better now. The administrator leading our tour smiled sympathetically. "Many families struggle with this decision, but we find that quality of relationship often improves when the physical care is handled by professionals." "See?" I nudged Julie. We can be daughters instead of nurses. You were always better at the nurse part anyway, Julie said ruefully. And you were always better at being the daughter she wanted, I replied, but without the bitterness that would have colored the words years before. It was simply a truth we could both acknowledge now. On Mom's 70th birthday, we organized a small celebration in the assisted living facility's private dining room. Julie had baked a cake, lopsided but earnest, and I had gathered old photo albums from both our apartments, snapshots of our shared history laid out in chronological order. Mom, more lucid since starting a new medication regimen, turned the pages slowly. "Look at you two," she said, pointing to a faded image of Julie and me as children, arms around each other's shoulders. "You were inseparable then." "Until I discovered boys and Emma discovered books," Julie joked. "You both took after different sides of the family," Mom observed. "Julie was all flash and charm like your father, and Emma—" She looked up at me. "You were steady, reliable, like grandmother." The comparison would have once felt like a consolation prize. Now it settled over me like a comfortable garment, worn to fit my shape. "Is that why she left everything to Julie?" I asked quietly. The question had lost its sting, but not its importance. Mom's gaze didn't waver. "Partly, and partly because she worried about you both in different ways. Julie, she worried, would never learn to stand on her own. And you," she reached for my hand, "she worried you'd never learn when to sit down and let someone else take the weight." "Well," Julie said, cutting into the silence that followed, "I'd say we've both proven her wrong and right in equal measure." We laughed, and the moment passed into something lighter. Later, as we were packing up the remnants of the party, Julie pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about selling my place, getting something bigger." "Oh?" I stacked plates, only half listening. "Something with a guest room. Maybe an accessible bathroom." She fidgeted with her watch. "I thought, when Mom doesn't need the facility anymore, and even before then, if you wanted to stay over sometimes." I set down the plates. "Julie, are you asking me to help you take care of Mom again?" "No," she looked horrified. "God, no. I'm saying I want us to be a family again. A real one, where no one person carries everything." I studied my sister's face, the familiar features that had once seemed to represent everything I wasn't, everything I couldn't be. Now I just saw Julie, with all her strengths and flaws, trying to build something better with me. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," I said finally. "Mom might be at the facility for years, but I appreciate the thought." Julie nodded, accepting the boundary without argument, another small evidence of how far we'd come. A year later, I stood in my apartment, surveying the half-packed boxes scattered across the floor. After 14 years in the same place, I'd accumulated more than I realized. Mementos and books and kitchen gadgets I'd forgotten I owned. My phone buzzed with a text. "Need help with the heavy stuff? I can come over after work." "Jay," I typed back. "Thanks, but the movers are coming tomorrow. Save your back." 3 dots appeared then. "At least let me bring dinner tonight. Last meal in the old place deserves celebration." I smiled. "Fine, but no cheap champagne this time." I set down the phone and resumed sorting through a box of old photographs. Near the bottom, I found one I'd forgotten existed. Grandmother and me in her garden, both of us kneeling beside a freshly planted rose bush. My hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, dirt smudged across my cheek. Grandmother was looking not at the camera but at me, an expression on her face I'd never noticed before. Pride, that's what it was. Simple and unmistakable. I slipped the photo into my purse instead of a box. Tomorrow it would find a place on the wall of my new home, the small house I'd finally saved enough to buy, with its sunny kitchen and garden-ready backyard. A place that was entirely mine, chosen by me, for me. I paused my packing, struck by a sudden memory. In Grandmother's backyard, the one that was now sold to strangers, there had been a stone bench beneath the old maple tree. She'd sit there in the evenings, watching the sunset with a cup of tea, sometimes inviting me to join her in wordless companionship. I'd forgotten those quiet moments amid the more demanding memories of medications and doctor visits. Perhaps that had been her way of showing love, those silent invitations to sit beside her, not with grand gestures or declarations, but in small, consistent moments of chosen togetherness. The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. Julie arrived early, takeout containers in hand, and a bottle of surprisingly decent champagne tucked under her arm. To new beginnings, Julie toasted, raising her plastic cup. And old endings, I added, clinking my cup against hers. Are you nervous? About the move? I considered the question, thinking of the letter hidden in my bedroom drawer, of the photo in my purse, of the winding path that had led me here. No, I said, surprised to find it true. For the first time in a long time, I'm exactly where I need to be. Julie smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand, a gesture once perfunctory, now genuine. Me too, sis. Me too. We sat together amid the boxes of my past, on the threshold of a future neither of us could have imagined 3 years before. Not perfect, not complete, but honest and real and finally seen.